To Lie with Dogs by Julian Cassius Subban. The rain is relentless, pounding the neon-lit streets of East Island with a fury that mirrors the tension bubbling beneath the city's surface. Dante Reaper Riverside moves through the shadows, his presence barely a whisper against the urban backdrop. The grid, the heart of East Island's downtown core, pulses with a life of its own, chaotic and unforgiving. Reaper's eyes, sharp and unyielding, track a group of Delta Squad sheriffs, their uniforms crisp, their demeanor anything but. These men, with their rigid posture and steely gazes, are part of the Grid Anti-Terrorism Unit, GATU, and they've cornered a black civilian in a dimly lit alley. The man's pleas are met with cold indifference. Reaper watches, his muscles tense, fists clenched at his sides, but he holds back. There's a time for action and a time for observation. Dante's nature tells him that patience will pay off, eventually. In a small, nondescript back room filled with weaponry and the hum of a distant neon sign, Reaper meets with his cousin, Electra Riverside, the go-to arms dealer in East Island. Electra is a whirlwind of energy, her movements precise as she checks the array of customized firearms laid out on a table. "You're still chasing that ghost, aren't you?" she quips, her eyes flicking up to meet his. She hands him a sleek, modified handgun, the kind that's as deadly as it is beautiful. "You know this won't bring you peace, right?" Reaper's grip tightens on the gun, his expression unreadable. "It's not about peace. It's about doing what's right." Electra smirks, her eyes betraying a mix of concern and admiration. "Just don't get yourself killed, cousin. We've got enough ghosts in this city already." Reaper's life is a balancing act between the shadows of East Island and the few moments of light he allows himself. He's driven by a deep sense of duty, a need to protect those who cannot protect themselves. His interactions with Cameron Phoenix, the prosecutor, are a constant tug-of-war between what he wants and what he knows is right. In the courtroom, Cameron is a force of nature. Her arguments are like well-honed blades, cutting through the defenses of the guilty with precision. Reaper watches her from the back, a ghost among the living. His feelings for her a secret even to himself. Outside the courtroom, their exchanges are brief, loaded with unspoken words and lingering glances, each trying to read the other without giving too much away. Then there's Zalika Dallas, Reaper's childhood crush. They share stolen moments, fleeting and intense, away from the dangers of their double lives. Zalika is strong, driven by the same instincts that guide Reaper. In a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of the grid, they sit across from each other, the tension between them palpable. "Do you ever think about what life would be like if we just left?" Zalika's voice is soft, almost wistful, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Reaper looks at her, his expression softening for a moment. "Sometimes, but we both know that's not an option." Zalika nods, her smile tinged with sadness. They both understand the paths they've chosen. There's no turning back. The calm of Reaper's routine is shattered when he receives intel about a massive arms deal orchestrated by Omar Domino, the most notorious gang leader in East Island. The idea of more weapons flooding the streets, endangering lives, ignites a fire in Reaper that he can no longer suppress. He follows a group of GATU officers, sheriffs in name only, through the grid's winding alleyways. They corner a group of young gang members, the boys' bravado quickly crumbling under the weight of the officers' threats. Reaper's fists tighten, the urge to intervene almost overpowering, but he knows better than to act on impulse. His nature demands that he protect, but his logic tells him to gather more information, to be strategic. In a dimly lit safe house on the outskirts of the grid, Reaper discusses his next move with Elektra. She's perched on a metal workbench, her hands deftly assembling a high-tech rifle. "These guys aren't just corrupt, they're lethal," Reaper says, his voice steady, but there's an edge to it, a simmering tension beneath the surface. Elektra's eyes narrow as she looks up from her work. "You're poking the hornet's nest, Dante. You know what happens when they get riled up." Reaper nods, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. "I can't just stand by and watch them destroy more lives?" Elektra sets the rifle down, her expression softening for just a moment. "Just don't do anything stupid. I'd hate to lose the only family I've got left." Reaper dives headfirst into the investigation, his every move calculated and precise. He tails the GATU officers through the grid, documenting their every misdeed: extortion, beatings, executions. The tension mounts as the officers grow increasingly paranoid, sensing that they're being watched. Reaper's nature drives him to gather as much evidence as possible, reminding himself to stay calm, to be patient. But the deeper he goes, the more dangerous the game becomes. The officers are closing ranks, their suspicions growing by the day. In the midst of the chaos, Reaper's connection with Zalika deepens. They meet in secret, away from the eyes of the grid and the dangers of their double lives. Zalika's personality mirrors Reaper's in many ways. She's strong, loyal, and driven by a deep sense of duty. But there's a vulnerability to her, a weariness that she tries to hide. "I'm tired, Dante," she admits one night as they sit on a rooftop overlooking East Island, the city's lights twinkling like stars below. "I'm tired of fighting, of hiding." Reaper looks at her, his heart aching for the peace they'll never have. "We're too stubborn to quit," he says with a small smile, trying to lighten the mood. Zalika leans into him, drawing comfort from his presence. "Yeah, too damn stubborn," she murmurs, her voice tinged with sadness. The investigation heats up, with Reaper delving deeper into the underworld of East Island. He infiltrates gang meetings, his presence unnoticed, as he gathers intel on Omar Domino and his dealings with the GATU officers. The tension is palpable as Reaper moves through the grid's dark alleys and shadowy warehouses, his every step a calculated risk. He observes the GATU officers meeting with Omar in a decrepit warehouse, the air thick with anticipation. The gang leader, a towering figure with a reputation for ruthlessness, negotiates with the officers, their conversation laced with threats and veiled promises. Reaper records everything, his heart pounding as the deal turns violent without warning. The officers, cold and efficient, execute several gang members, leaving no witnesses behind. Reaper stays hidden, his fists clenched, his breath steady despite the rage boiling inside him. His nature demands justice, but his other side urges now is not the time. The stakes skyrocket when Reaper uncovers the truth. The GATU officers are not who they claim to be. They're mercenaries, hired by Omar Domino to enforce his will and eliminate his enemies. The revelation is a gut punch, but it also solidifies Reaper's resolve. His sense of duty, his need to protect, pushes him to confront Zalika. She reveals her own secret. She's been undercover as a Delta Squad sheriff, working to dismantle the same conspiracy. The world tilts on its axis for Reaper, but there's no time to process the betrayal, no time to dwell on the implications. The tension ratcheting up as Reaper and Zalika realize they're in far deeper than they ever imagined. With the truth out in the open, Reaper and Zalika team up, their shared sense of duty driving them forward. They move through East Island with a lethal efficiency, their every action a testament to their bond, forged in the fires of battle. The mercenaries, realizing they've been compromised, become more ruthless. Their attacks more coordinated, more deadly. Reaper's protective instincts kick into overdrive. Every decision he makes is calculated to keep Zalika safe. The camera captures the intensity of their battles. Gunfights in narrow alleys, close-quarter combat in crumbling buildings, the air thick with the smell of blood and gunpowder. The mercenaries, sensing that their time is running out, become increasingly desperate, their actions more brutal. Reaper and Zalika fight back with everything they have, but the odds are stacked against them. In a heart-wrenching turn, Reaper orchestrates his own death to draw out the mercenaries and protect Zalika. The scene is intense. Reaper, outnumbered and cornered in a dilapidated warehouse, takes several hits from the mercenaries' military-grade weapons. He collapses to the ground, blood pooling around him as the life seems to drain from his body. Zalika's scream pierces the air as she watches him fall, her world shattering in an instant. The camera lingers on Zalika's face, her tears mixing with the rain as she cradles Reaper's lifeless body. "You promised me," she whispers, her voice broken, but there's no response. The world goes dark, the only sound the relentless patter of rain on concrete. Zalika, now consumed by grief and rage, is left to believe that Reaper is truly gone. She buries her feelings, channeling her pain into a singular focus, bringing the mercenaries and Omar Domino to justice. Electra, who is the only one who knows the truth, provides Zalika with the weapons and intel she needs to finish what Reaper started. "He wouldn't want you to give up," Electra says, her voice steady, but her eyes betray her own pain. "We do this for him, and for everyone else who's been caught in the crossfire." Zalika, her nature now tinged with the cold edge of vengeance, prepares for the final battle, her resolve unbreakable. The final confrontation is set. Zalika, fueled by her grief and her love for Reaper, storms Omar Domino's stronghold, a fortress of steel and glass that looms over the grid like a dark sentinel. The tension is palpable as she fights her way through the mercenaries, her every move precise, deadly. The camera captures every moment, the flash of her blade as she takes down enemies with brutal efficiency, the cold fire in her eyes as she edges closer to Omar. The mercenaries, led by a particularly vicious commander known as Viper, are relentless, but Zalika's determination is stronger. She dispatches them one by one, her loyalty to Reaper driving her forward. "This is for Dante," she whispers as she plunges her blade into Viper's chest, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. The battle reaches its climax as Zalika confronts Omar Domino in his penthouse, the city sprawling out beneath them. The room is a stark contrast to the gritty streets below. Luxurious, opulent, a testament to Omar's power. He stands by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his expression one of calm indifference as Zalika enters. "You've made quite a mess, Zalika," Omar Domino says, his voice smooth, almost amused, as he stands in the opulent penthouse, the nightscape of East Island sprawling out behind him. Zalika's grip tightens on her weapon, her heart pounding with a mixture of rage and sorrow. "You took everything from me," she spits, her voice shaking with emotion, each word a knife edge of pain. Omar's smile widens, a cold, calculating look in his eyes as he takes a slow step forward. "Did I?" he counters, his tone dripping with condescension. "Or did you lose it all on your own?" The tension in the air is electric, the room charged with the weight of the past. Zalika lunges at Omar. Their fight a brutal, no-holds-barred battle that smashes through the glass windows and sends them crashing through the penthouse's luxurious furniture. The camera follows their every move, the raw intensity. Of their struggle, the desperation in Zalika's eyes, the cold detachment in Omar's. Every blow is fueled by her grief, her need for justice, her desire to make Omar pay for the pain he has caused. Just as Zalika seems to gain the upper hand, overpowering Omar and holding him at gunpoint, the atmosphere shifts. The sirens of the Delta Squad sheriffs wail in the distance, signaling that backup is on its way. Zalika's voice is cold as steel as she says, "You'll pay for everything you've done." But before she can pull the trigger, a shadow moves behind her. The camera focuses on Omar's face, his eyes narrowing with a sinister gleam. Suddenly, like a nightmare brought to life, Omar pulls out a sawed-off shotgun from beneath a fallen chair. A jump scare that sends a shockwave through the room. The blast is deafening as he pulls the trigger, and Zalika's body is thrown back by the force, crashing against the shattered glass of the broken window. Her eyes widen in shock and pain, a gasp of disbelief escaping her lips as she falls. Cameron Phoenix, who had been fighting her own battle across the room, turns just in time to see Zalika's body hit the floor, blood pooling beneath her. The camera captures the horror and anguish in Cameron's eyes, the disbelief that someone so strong, so important to her, could be taken away in an instant. Omar, his expression triumphant, doesn't get long to savor his victory. The Delta Squad sheriffs storm the penthouse, their arrival too late to save Zalika, but perfectly timed to take down Omar. The camera follows Cameron as she pushes through the chaos, her grief transforming into a cold, unyielding resolve. "Get him," she orders, her voice devoid of emotion as the sheriffs close in on Omar, wresting the shotgun from his grip and dragging him to the ground. Cameron stands over Omar, her face a mask of controlled fury. "You're under arrest," she says, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The camera lingers on her as she watches the sheriffs cuff Omar, her heart heavy with the weight of all she's lost. As dawn breaks over East Island, the city begins to wake from its long nightmare. The Delta Squad sheriffs move methodically through the penthouse, securing the scene and arresting Omar Domino's remaining mercenaries. The streets below are eerily quiet, the first light of day cutting through the lingering shadows, a stark contrast to the violence that erupted mere hours before. Cameron stands alone in the penthouse, the morning light casting a pale glow over the wreckage. The camera captures the exhaustion in her posture, the way her shoulders slump as the adrenaline fades, leaving only the aching emptiness of loss. She looks out over the city, her expression a mix of sorrow and grim determination. She knows the fight isn't over, not for her, not for East Island, but for now, there's a brief sense of peace, a momentary reprieve in a city that has seen too much darkness. Below, the Delta Squad sheriffs secure Omar Domino in the back of a heavily armored vehicle. The camera shifts to focus on Cameron's face, her eyes distant as she watches them drive away. There's no satisfaction in her expression, only the cold comfort of knowing that justice, however bitter, has been served. As the camera pulls back, the sun rises higher, its light spilling over the skyline of East Island, casting long shadows across the city. The image lingers on the horizon, a symbol of hope and renewal in a place that has been through hell and back. But the scars remain, etched into the heart of the city and those who fought to save it. Cameron takes a deep breath, her resolve hardening as she turns away from the window, ready to face whatever comes next. The final shot shows the empty penthouse, a place that once held the lives and struggles of those who fought within it. Now it stands silent, a testament to the battles won and the lives lost in the pursuit of justice.